Hey everybody. So a lot of you now know that Saturday's video was sort of a failure, and that is 100% my fault. I didn't do my research properly, and for that, I was unaware that the topic for the following video was a complete hoax. I am not sure if it's simply because I missed this piece of information, or just because I was so excited about this topic that I got ahead of myself. Either way, there is no excuse for what happened, and for that, I apologize. Let it be known that this video is a hoax, and it is being re-uploaded since so many of you wanted, and well, demanded it back. I hope everyone understands my reasoning for why I took it down in the first place. I respect and value all of you, and I didn't ever want it to appear like I was intentionally trying to sell a lie or waste anyone's time. With that out of the way, I do hope you enjoy this video in its original format. I am not going to add any cuts or edits in the video because honestly I feel like that would just chop up the video too much and make it overall poor quality. Thank you all again for bringing this to my attention that it is and was a hoax, and I will do better following this in terms of my accuracy of research. Now, without any more rambling on my end, I hope you all enjoy the video. Today's video is sponsored by the Modern Frontiersmen. They are a group of independent documentarians dedicated to documenting the then and now of the world. They explore dangerous and forgotten places and seek knowledge everywhere they go. So, if you like urban exploration, history, or adventures, check them out. A link will be in the description below.
Look, she was out of her mind. That's all you need to know, okay? The boy is dead. Simple as that. Just stop digging.
This is former Sergeant Santiago, as in retired. I've dealt with enough harassment on this case. I've moved house, I've moved state, I've moved from everything and the people I've known. I can't deal with this anymore, mentally, emotionally, or physically. So please do not call me anymore or anyone in my family.
A child is a beautiful thing. They are the apple of their parents' eye, and something both mothers and fathers would do anything at all to protect. Or, in the case of Olivia Mabel, bring back. In 1990, the Mabel family, consisting of the father Travis, the mother Olivia, and their 6-year-old son Aiden, lived in Selenia, Texas. The family would soon be struck by a tragedy that would not only tear them apart, but be the cause for a mystery that still, to this day, over 25 years later, has left law enforcement, skeptics, and paranormal enthusiasts stumped at forming any sort of conclusion. This is the true, yet unsolved story of the mystery of Olivia Mabel. Our story starts in Selenia, Texas, in the year 1990. Selenia was and still is a relatively small city in North Texas, about an hour from Dallas and known for its small town type feel, where high school football is king, a church is on every corner, and time seems to move a bit slower, where nothing is rushed. In some ways, a nice spot to settle down and raise a family, if the fast-paced and loud metropolis isn't for you. Yet, Selenia also plays home to a very dark and sinister secret that has remained unsolved for nearly 3 decades. The mystery came from the Mabel family, who called Selenia home and lived at the Footlight Ranch. For Travis and Olivia, life was good, and their 6-year-old son Aiden was growing up to be a well-mannered and outgoing child. He enjoyed spending time with his parents, playing with the kids in the town, watching cartoons, and basically just being a kid, just like we all did when we were his age. It seemed that the Mabel family really were living the American dream. That was, until a shocking event sent the town into mourning and destroyed the lives of both Travis and especially Olivia. On March 13, 1990, Aiden's body would be found on the family's property at a small pond. Ruled an accidental drowning, the death of their beloved and only son shattered the lives of both Olivia and Travis. Throughout the remainder of the year, Olivia sank deeper and deeper into her depression, disconnecting from her family, work, friends, and most of all, Travis. The unfortunate statistic about the death of a child is that it usually does end with divorce between the spouse, as the marriage cannot take the tremendous amount of loss both are experiencing. And that is exactly what happened in 1991, when Travis filed for divorce and left the state entirely. The Footlight Ranch, what was once filled with life and happiness from the Mabel family, was now an empty shell where Olivia was the only resident. For the remainder of 1991, Olivia would occasionally be seen in town, grief-stricken and empty. Many of the residents in the area attempted to contact her and try to get her to somewhat move on with her life. Yet, all attempts were in vain, as she was too crushed by the loss to do so. Eventually, she quit her job and further distanced herself from her family and few remaining friends. In September of 1991 was the last reported sighting of Olivia from virtually anyone in Salina, and for the next 2.5 years, nobody would see nor interact with Olivia. In fact, many around the area assumed that she had simply packed up and moved, maybe finally deciding to try to make the best out of the loss and attempt at reclaiming some of her life. Nobody in the over 2 years ever reported seeing her, so you can understand why the thought of her simply moving could be understood. Surely, she couldn't have just stayed in that house for that long without someone noticing, or someone remotely close to her knowing. Yet, that is exactly what happened. And for over 2.5 years, the doors to the ranch house remained closed. The shutters stayed drawn, and movement, if any at all, was rare. Things stayed this way until February 27th, 1994. Around 9:30 on the evening of the 27th, several phone calls were made to the Collin County Police Department. Each call the dispatcher would answer would be met with silence. Not a complete muted silence, but more of an ambient. The dispatcher could obviously tell someone was calling, and it was an issue with communications. It was simply someone calling, yet saying nothing. This happened 4 more times over the course of an hour, each call coming from the same number. As standard practice goes for police, a unit was dispatched to the address the number was associated to. That address was the Footlight Ranch, the once happy home of the Mabel family. Once police arrived to what looked to be an abandoned house, they made their way to the front door and knocked. There was no answer. After another knock and announcing who they were, still no answer. They checked the door handle and found it to be unlocked, and when they opened the door, the officers would soon be met with a sight they would never forget. When police entered the home, they were shocked at the condition of the house. Thick dust covered every surface. The smell of must filled the air, and the entire place had a disturbing presence about it. Regaining themselves, the officers continued searching the house, calling out for anyone there to come out, or at least let them know if they were okay. They again heard nothing. As they began looking room to room, each being in the same condition as the rest of the home, they came to a closed bedroom door. They opened it and found Olivia Mabel, dead, sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. She was in a nightgown and slippers, and in her hands, she was clutching a stick figure. Unresponsive and decomposing, the police quickly alerted that they had a deceased person and to get more units to the home. As they continued their search of the room, they then focused their attention at what appeared to be an altar of some kind, decorated with hundreds of handwritten letters from Olivia, all addressed to her late son, Aiden. Several pictures of her son were also on the altar, along with various toys of his. Drawings, poems, and flowers also decorated the altar, and it was becoming very obvious that Olivia's grief had consumed her to the point of obsession, as she could not bear to live a life without her son. What was also noticed by police was that at the front of the altar were 3 pieces of paper with words written in Tibetan. The words translated loosely to construct or to build. These are some of the photographs taken of the scene. After the house had been searched and things properly documented, the body of Olivia was taken to the morgue. Her cause of death has never been released, but what was that at the time of those phone calls to the police on the 27th, Olivia had been dead for a minimum of 4 months. Naturally, many involved in the case were both confused and a little scared. There were countless questions with very few answers, but none so much as who or what made those phone calls.
Mabel's son, Aiden Mabel, died on the property in 1990 from a drowning incident. The documents and writings found at the scene were written in an unidentified language and are currently being analyzed.
Let's go.
Miss Mabel was discovered deceased inside one of the rooms. Her body was found upright in a rocking chair, but in a figure made of sticks and leaves. Judging from initial reports, Miss Mabel had been dead a matter of months. That is honestly all we know at this point. If you have any information, please do not hesitate to.
The investigation into the death of Olivia Mabel was met with a lot of questions, as they had no idea what she had been doing all the time in the house by herself. It in fact had been nearly 3 years since anyone had last seen her, and in that amount of time, who knows what all she went through. Did she finally snap and lose all touch with reality? Or was it that she was so grief-stricken that she cared nothing for human interaction and only wanted to be alone with her thoughts and memories of her son? Many lean to the latter, as with the obvious. She constructed an altar and wrote hundreds of letters to him, letters nobody but her would ever see. The stick figure that she was found to be clutching was later discovered to be dressed in pieces of Aiden's clothing, and when examining it further, it seemed to be a very crude version of him. Upon further digging, police found something even more baffling than the phone calls that were made the night of the 27th. They found a letter written by Olivia, dated on the same day as the phone calls. And the contents of the letter are both heartbreaking and horrifying. My Aiden, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have never let it get like this. I'm leaving. I will not let you keep me, you vile, evil creature. Mommy's coming for you, Aiden. My sweet Aiden. Mommy loves you. The words of a distraught and broken-hearted mother. Her final words to her son. The thing she loved the most in life are both tragic and at the same time scary. I will not let you keep me, you vile, evil creature. I think it's safe to say that she is not referring to Aiden. Then, if that is the case, who or what is Olivia talking about? To answer that, we have to look back at the photos taken of the altar, the Tibetan writings of to conjure. Many involved in the case believe that Olivia, in her desperation, was trying to create a tulpa. A tulpa is a part of Tibetan Buddhism and is the concept of being able to create a person or object through spiritual or mental powers. They are said to require great amounts of thought and focus to conjure one. With the altar, the Tibetan writings, the stick figure, and the strong emotional grief that Olivia was going through, it could have been possible that she was attempting, or possibly did, create a tulpa, in hopes of it being a way to communicate or see Aiden. But if we consider what she wrote in her final letter, her referring to a vile, evil creature, then perhaps she didn't summon Aiden, but in fact maybe something that would feed off of her grief and sadness. Many people who have heard this story buy into this theory, and honestly, it holds weight, if you believe in the paranormal, that is. How else do you explain the letter being written on the same day her body was found? The phone calls have to be factored into that as well. All while we know that Olivia had been dead for at least 4 months at the time she was found. Also, we need to include that Olivia checked all of the boxes that would be needed to summon or create a tulpa, and when you factor all of that in, you're going to have a hard time explaining, honestly, anything else. This wasn't fake. I have seen the death certificate of Aiden. The altar pictures are obviously real, and the house has even been featured in a paranormal ghost hunter show. The police that were there on the scene that night were also very bothered by not only what they saw, but what they felt too. One of those officers, Francesca Santiago, described what she felt that night as the following. I spent a lot of time in El Paso and had an uncle that was into some really dark occult stuff. I recognized it immediately. When I walked into that room and saw the symbols and the photos on that altar, I felt a very strong, angry presence looming over me. It was honestly the last thing I expected to see in this town. The house that the Mabels called home still sits there in Salina, Texas. Still unoccupied as of the date of this recording, and most all who live in the town know what happened there and why nobody wants to buy it. They feel that the energy there is evil, and who can truly blame someone for not wanting to go near it? Since Olivia's body was discovered, the house has gained somewhat of an urban legend type vibe to it, that it's not only haunted, but you can still hear Olivia's cries at night if you listen closely. The story of Olivia Mabel is both a tragic and creepy one that has left all who've heard it at a loss for words on how to rationally explain everything away. The only thing I can hope from all of this, however, is that Olivia was reunited with her son Aiden, and that they are both finally at peace. But what if whatever Olivia conjured is still there, in that house? Then what could happen to the next family who decides to call the Footlight Ranch home? I hope you enjoyed this video. This is definitely one of the most bizarre and unexplainable cases I have ever come across, and I am very curious to know what you all think in the comments below. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and I will see all of you in the next video. Special thanks to all of my patrons, especially my top tier patrons: Borgov the Straightener, Jace, Beat Beat Bananas, Boop, A Dumb Thought, Blake, KCD, Danny Nunez, Flampaya, Jason Fontella, OOD Hamhorde, Lena, Robert Rep, Ryan93, SBeeve, and Skelly. Stay safe out there, friends. Good night.